Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Guaranteed ROI on Real Estate Resizing. I'm Jennifer Getz, the Editorial Director of Facility Executive Magazine, and this webinar is presented by Hubstar. Before we get started, I'll cover a few housekeeping items. Please note the control panel on your screen. This is where you can submit questions via the question box at any time. There will be a Q&A portion after this presentation, so please type your questions in there to send them to us. If at any time you experience a technical difficulty, please send us a message via that question section and someone on our team will answer you privately. Also, please note the orange arrow on the left side of your control panel. Clicking on that arrow will either expand or collapse the control panel, so please be sure the panel is expanded so you can access the question box. And if you are interested in continuing education credits, please note that you'll receive a certificate of attendance in an email from Facility Executive after this webinar. You can report to your association for the credit. Now I'll introduce your speaker today. Chris Lomdu is the Vice President of Product at Hubstar. Chris has over 20 years of experience across engineering and product development in workplace technology solutions and is passionate about building the next generation of tools required for effective hybrid working and the future of workplace strategy. Hello, Chris. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks, Jen. And thank you, everybody, for attending today. Excited to present to you today. So with that said, we'll go ahead and jump into things. So we're going to start off by talking a little bit about the role of real estate in the current climate and how understanding what your options are in terms of portfolio reduction can return that immediate ROI. So having that ability or agility in the can, so you're coming to the table with solutions rather than additional problems, it's important to understand what your capabilities are to maneuver relative to your real estate portfolio. So again, we're going to start off with the role of real estate in the current climate. So let's jump slide here. There we go. All right. So the first is focusing in on the business ROI in terms of the role of real estate in the current climate. So if we look at your organization or most organizations in general, you look at number one on the P&L, it's typically HR. And most folks are suffering from staffing shortages currently. So I was reading a survey yesterday that outlined 42% of those that participated in this survey see staffing shortages as an inhibiting factor in 23. So looking at that number one on the P&L, and you couple that with the focus of most organizations being on employee retention, and talent attraction, the last thing one wants to do is have to look at that number one on the P&L and focus on that. So the eye goes to number two, which is typically real estate. Organizations that prior to the pandemic and even now hold large real estate portfolios, it's a significant portion of expense. So that's what the focus is in terms of today, how we can take a look at identifying potential savings when we're looking at the real estate portfolio supply and factoring in the new demand for space. So right sizing the portfolio is top of mind. So you have that number one on the list there in terms of right sizing is that portfolio reduction, that hard dollar savings. So do we need the same size portfolio to continue business in the same way we did prior to the pandemic? With hybrid work being here to stay and looking at when people are working home, that is an extension of your real estate portfolio supply. It factors in. So there's the opportunity to identify potential savings, and then that can be brought to the table in terms of acting on it and incorporating that into a strategy. So that's the number one, is identifying opportunities for portfolio reduction, because that's the hard dollar savings. Then below that, you've got the cost efficient use of real estate. So this gets into now patterns of use. So there might be certain days of the week, like Fridays, for example, and Mondays, in which an entire building, looking at maybe one building, is not used to its fullest potential. So there's the option to turn floors down or shut floors down on particular days. So you're not heating, cooling, cleaning those floors, and we're consolidating occupancy to specific floors, which provides a better employee experience. When folks come in on a Friday, it's not a ghost town, they're more likely to perhaps come back because it was a positive experience. So that's the second level of cost savings. And that gets into the efficient use of space and occupancy, which I touched on already, and then delivering a positive employee experience for hybrid work. So when folks do come into the office, how can we make sure that it's a positive experience? Their peers are there, so coming in on a day that's going to be most productive for them. And then lastly, they're helping to deliver environmental goals. So many organizations have specific environmental targets, and one way to help achieve those goals is reduction of the portfolio and then more efficient use of the portfolio for the supply that remains. So that's the business ROI that we're going to touch on today. And then the second thing here is people ROI. So the last time that we spoke in the sort of chapter 1 of this two-part series, we spoke quite a bit about the human resource impact on hybrid and the alteration of behaviors changing, people adapting to work from home, opening up the office again, executing return to office strategies, and of course, encouraging folks to come in and use the office so that culture can be part of the organization again, and folks can understand the benefit of collaboration. So this is still going on. So many folks that I talk to have yet to kick off their return to office strategies. Some are in the middle of it and still trying to understand what the equilibrium is between folks working from home and coming to the office. So you have on the left-hand side, people switching from working at home only, where they were working in isolation using technology like this, like Teams, like Google Meet and Zoom and all those different technologies to interact with folks. But they were limited to the capabilities they had at home in terms of limiting conditions. It can be isolating. And there's different challenges that are on each individual, and that could equipment factors into that as well. And then we've got the office opening up again. So an emphasis on employee experience and activity-based working and getting back to being face-to-face and seeing colleagues that we haven't seen in a while that sort of benefit the social interaction. There's more positives to being in the office than just the whiteboarding sessions and conference rooms and things like that. And this is hybrid, right? So it's working from home on some days and coming into the office when you need to. So this requires an adaptation in some cases of the physical space. So it's more fit for purpose when folks come into the office. Everyone's different, every business is different. So what is the higher demand in terms of different types of space? Is it collaboration space? Is it focus space? When new talent comes in, when new hires come in, you want them to adopt the culture. So having that sense of place is an important thing. And that yields happy employees, which again, to the what we spoke about in the last webinar, it factors into the attraction of new talent as well as retention of existing. So that's the people ROI, the benefit of still having an office, right? You look at all the different IT projects that are planned to be a focus in 23, which is all kinds of different things in that category, but everything as a service and digital business, and but there's always been a focus on cybersecurity and risk, but more of a focus on those projects. You factor in economic instability, and that shuffles the deck a bit. And you also have the office that still factors into productivity and just continuity of the business in general. So that's the people ROI aspect. Let's jump to the next thing. And this is the impact of getting things wrong, right? So the real goal here is to understand what the new demand is. So as folks are coming into the office, what is the demand for the office? And getting it wrong can have a negative impact. That could have a significant impact on productivity. So this is just a slide that talks about the potential of getting it wrong. So there's a lot of different strategies that are being employed today to understand what demand is, and that's really what we focus on in terms of Hubstar space utilization. It's a suite of analytics that allows you to measure actuals. If you don't have that, if you don't see what your actual demand is over time, you might be sending folks into the field and doing counts, getting a feel for, hey, how busy is that building? Surveys to employees, and then you come up with we think the average occupancy at this building is 15%. We think the average occupancy here is 20%, and the headquarters we think is 45%. So there might be two satellite buildings, hub and spoke. You've got the hub being the headquarters, and then two ancillary buildings that are on the outskirts of that where the headquarters is. So there is an assumption, and a lot of times when this is done, folks go into the field, it's at a specific point in time. So you're getting a very narrow result in terms of getting a feel for what the actual demand is when we're taking a look at maybe the past 90 days aggregated into patterns and trends. There's also folks that are looking at security badge access, right, which is at best attendance, but it's something. But it is factoring into the we think this is what it is. So if we shut down these two buildings and consolidate in the headquarters, we feel we'll have enough room. Estimated occupancy is 80%. But what can happen is we get it wrong and we haven't hit that equilibrium of understanding the trend is going up in terms of office. So there was a point in time analysis done, and we're not looking at it over time and looking at the trend. And there's risk, and the big risk is disruption to business, right? There's health and safety concerns. There's folks that may have a very negative experience. I went into the office, there was no place to go. I had to sit in a conference room in a chair. It was not a productive day. And then there's, of course, the going over potential fire code capacities and all kinds of different things that factor in here. And I'm not going to spend too much time here. I think everyone gets it. There is a pretty big negative of getting it wrong. And it's not like you can pivot on a dime and be able to increase capacity quickly if we've already just shut down two buildings. So moving on here, how do we get things right and where do you start? So Hubstar Space Utilization is a analytics platform that focuses specifically on measuring actual occupancy, otherwise referred to as utilization. That's the single purpose of it. All of the analytics are focused on delivering those data points to real estate professionals. And what's nice about this platform is it's data agnostic. So it allows our customers to start off with what's available. So Wi-Fi is something that's readily available and something we have the capability to integrate to. So from that Wi-Fi data, all the connected devices, we're capable of deriving from that actual occupancy, a count of people relative to time and space, people, or place, I should say. So what building, floor, and area of the floor are they occupying? So this gives us what we refer to as good. So Wi-Fi gives us good data. It allows us to analyze demand for each of our buildings. So we can understand that the actual occupancy, as opposed to an assumption, is 20% in building one. And actual occupancy is 15% here and 35% at headquarters. And we can analyze the trends, and we can see predictive analytics for predicted future occupancy, which can factor in to decisions. So what the good data gives us is, first of all, it gives us the capability to understand, okay, we can develop a strategy, we understand the demand at each of our locations, and we can develop a strategy to say, okay, these are the buildings we absolutely want to keep. These we're not sure of yet because still trending up. We still haven't met equilibrium yet in terms of what our hybrid demand is. And these buildings, you know, that we've got leases coming up on those, and we're going to let those go. So it allows an organization to develop a strategy and put the portfolio into different buckets, which provides options and allows you to identify potential savings. So that's what we consider good. And it's a great starting point because Wi-Fi is there. There's not a inhibiting factor of a high cost to install sensors, and there's the cost of the sensors and the installation cost. Not to say sensors are bad, they're great, but there's that high barrier to entry. This is a great way to justify a business case straight out of the gates with using data that's available today. So gets us to the next one, which is what we consider better. So this is Wi-Fi plus another data point. So in this case, we went with sensors as the second data point. So using Wi-Fi and sensors. So this allows us to unlock additional business cases, answers to specific business cases, which in this case, Wi-Fi can be used for all of the seating, the workstations, the large areas of cubicles, and then sensors can be deployed to the collaboration space. This separates those two functions out. So now we can start to answer questions. Okay, for these buildings that we're definitely keeping, what's the higher demand? Are folks coming in to collaborate? Are they going into conference rooms and open collab and maybe sitting in the kitchen, not kitchen, cafeteria? Or are they coming in to focus and sit in workstations and offices? So what is the higher demand? What are we seeing in terms of a higher demand for those different types of space? So that's the what we call better. And again, that unlocks additional value proposition, and it allows one to strategically deploy sensors to buildings you're going to keep, as opposed to something where you deploy sensors to only answer the question of, hey, we're not keeping this building, and we spent a lot of money on installing those sensors there. So that's what we consider better, right? Unlocking additional value proposition by deploying sensors. And then we get to what we consider best, and this is 3 data points feeding into the analytics platform. Oh, and by the way, just back to that prior one, with sensors, it doesn't have to be one type of sensor or one sensor provider. We work with customers that have deployed one sensor vendor in one geographic region and another sensor vendor in another geographic region because they saw a benefit of having the sensor provider local to do the install and be there for support. So with our platform, it allows for multiple sensor vendors to feed into one platform. That gives you one source of truth and also a consistent set of measures, as opposed to having some data over in one area, data in another area, internal data warehouse with something else, and no correlation between the two, or 3 in that case. So that gets us to what we consider best, which is Wi-Fi for the seating, plus the sensors for the collaboration space, and then adding in the data feed from a booking system. So here at Hubstar, we have not only the space utilization platform, which is the focus of our conversation today, but also a next generation scheduling system, which enables folks to book spaces, to book conference rooms, and then when they show up, we know if they've used that space, right? So we can use that desk booking data as a soft sensor. So someone checks in, hey, they were there at that desk, or that meeting did take place. So that desk booking data can provide some valuable insights. It also provides valuable insights, in particular, around demand for the different types of collaboration space and the different types of workstations. So there might be just long team desks, and there might be cubicles, and there might be offices. What is under higher demand? And then also in terms of collaboration space, open collab, closed collab, library space, all these different types of spaces, open couch seating. What are folks doing? Where are folks looking to, or what's more popular in terms of the booking? And then also right sizing the sizes of rooms for the demand. And that is something that we help out with what we call prescriptive analytics. So analyzing all of that data on your behalf and then prescribing a recommendation, which is you need 3 more of this size, 2 less of this. So it outlines the utopian state in terms of the amount of collaboration space and the capacities of that collaboration space. So this is what we consider best. And again, that then unlocks additional value proposition. So as additional data points are fed into Hubstar Space Utilization, it unlocks additional value and lights up additional analytics. So that is how you get there in terms of measuring actual occupancy. And what we see working with a lot of different clients in terms of the best place to start, and then the sort of journey you start with, and adding in additional data types like sensors and booking. And you may have a booking system already in place. The beauty of Hubstar Space Utilization is we can integrate with anything. So as long as that system is capable of integrating, we can look to derive that data from that system. All right, so just need to point this out. It's probably fairly obvious to most that are on the phone, but it doesn't mean your strategy has to be consistent. And also when you're looking at portfolio right sizing, you have to take geography into account, because you can't close one building in Germany and move all those folks to London, right? That's not going to work. But what this is outlining is, one, you have to account for geography and maybe have different strategies for different markets around the globe. And it also means that you don't have to have a consistent set of data feeds. You can see here, right, there's 3 different feeds, so the best in the US and in the UK, and in Canada there's 2. So you can deploy what's there and what makes sense based upon the geography and how you're globally deployed as an organization. So this 100% factors in. And then also a big point is there doesn't have to be continuity of data. And again, there doesn't have to be the same sensors deployed everywhere, or even the same scheduling system or the same Wi-Fi system. We have customers that are upgrading, and they're using, some sites have HP ALE for Wi-Fi, and then other sites that have HP Aruba Central. So 2 feeds coming in. So it doesn't mean that there has to be continuity, and the strategies can be set for each geographic region. So this next slide just hones in, right? We focus in here on the US, and this just continues that same point I made in the prior slide, where we see the Texas office has Wi-Fi only, and the headquarters in Boston has 3 data sources. So it can be that mixed fleet approach, because the Hubstar Space Utilization is data agnostic. And then again, gives you still one single source of truth. So I don't have data all over the place in these different locations. It's all coming into one system, and then the strategy can be defined and implemented, or at least identified what the potential is for supply reduction, and then the decisions can be made to act on it. All right. So this gets into then the secondary value proposition that we were talking about in the initial slide. So there's that hard dollar savings, but a lot factors into removing a building from the portfolio holistically, right? There's a drive time analysis and all the different analysis that needs to be done to justify closing a building and not having a productivity hit on the business. So this is another example, but there's certainly buildings that potentially can be removed from the portfolio if it mathematically makes sense, drive time makes sense, and also understanding what the demand is from the folks that are coming into the office. It might be collaboration is number one, so the hub becomes a conference center. We don't need the other ancillary offices, right? So other things that factor in there too are lease expirations and the contractual obligations you may have. So this one is focusing in on, we're looking at a building over on the left-hand side, and folks are coming into the office in a hybrid way. So on Mondays, it's sort of low occupancy, and Tuesdays it bumps up, and so on and so forth. But folks are going and occupying the different floors as they see fit. So going to the second and third and fourth floor and not concentrating occupancy. So in this case, occupancy is 25%, but across all the floors. So we're having to heat those floors, light those floors, clean those floors, so on and so forth. Security, maintenance, and also the employee experience. So someone drove into the office, got up early, they got dressed the whole nine, and then drove into the office. Gas isn't too cheap right now, so endured that expense. And they show up and there's not many people there. And that might be just, hey, that triggers, why am I here? Why am I coming in? I'm never coming in again, right? And that's going to establish a negative occupancy trend as far as the ROI strategy is concerned. So what this allows us to do is look at the occupancy of floors and say, hey, do we need, first of all, based upon peaks, and that's the key, based upon peak occupancy demand, do we need all the floors? So we might want to still keep this building, but we may shed a floor or two, sublease them, or if the lease is coming up, the expiration is coming up, and we have an option, we may exercise that option, but we may exercise it for only 2 floors and not 4. This allows us to concentrate occupancy, so we're not paying for those floors anymore, and our occupancy is concentrated. If that's not an opportunity where we can just shed the floors holistically, then the next best thing is incrementally turning floors off. So if we look at Monday, we don't have a high demand on Monday. Friday, not a high demand. So let's shut those floors off on Mondays and Fridays. So when folks do show up on those days, it's a consistent employee experience, and we're not having to heat, cool, and clean those floors. And what's nice about, and the reason we're so focused here at Hubstar on a occupancy management focus and all the tools necessary to manage occupancy in this new world, one being measure, what we're talking about here in terms of measuring actual occupancy, and the other influencing occupancy with scheduling. So I can go into SmartWay 2 and I can say, you know what, turn off floor 2 and 3 on Fridays, and then folks can't book those spaces anymore. It's concentrating occupancy for those days, for those floors. So it's one thing to see the data, it's another to operationalize that decision, right? And that's why we're focused solely on occupancy management here. So that is looking at a particular building that we might be keeping, but reducing supply maybe on a day-to-day basis, or reducing floors altogether. All right, so this is a chart I like. This is one that I showed in the last webinar that we did here, and this shows the effects of hybrid, right? So prior to the pandemic, everyone was coming into the office all the time, right? So you had a more consistent demand for office space and different types of tools that were in use at the time. Now we live in a different world where it's a hybrid world, and folks have the option to come into the office. And this is, again, the typical end result of hybrid. So Monday low, Tuesday spikes, Wednesday's down, Thursday's up, and Friday all the way off. So if we look at developing our space plan here, we have to go off of the peaks. So right here is our peak on Tuesday. And this might be an aggregate, right? This is not looking at a week. This might be looking at 90 days, 6 months, or a year's worth of data aggregated into days of the week. And within Hubstar space utilization, we'll see some screenshots in a moment, it's going to call out the peaks. So if we're going off the peaks, which is the high water mark in this case, there's not much extra supply here in this particular situation. So our options to reduce supply, there's not much there. There's about the padding we need to account for future growth and not inhibiting productivity when anomalies happen. So if we look at the second line that's painted here, which is the results of influence. So if you understand your patterns of use and then utilize a space scheduling tool like SmartWay 2 to influence occupancy, this allows us to bring the peaks down to the average, which is going to unlock a lot more potential. So just by bringing that peak down, we're unlocking a lot more potential supply. So there's a lot of hard dollars that are wrapped up in that red right there, which is, it's an option, right? This is potential supply that we could do without. And this can factor into developing a strategy and looking at, okay, all the different buildings in the portfolio, what the demand is against them, what the potential supply reduction is, and looking at a strategy to consolidate and realize some of that potential savings. So really just to really highlight the difference there, right? By bringing that peak down, that's the amount of potential savings we unlock by having the two sides of the coin, which is measuring and monitoring in a passive way, measuring the actual occupancy or demand for space, and then the other, which is how folks come into the office. They come into the office through a space scheduling solution like SmartWay 2, which can influence that occupancy and also optimize it in terms of making sure when someone comes in, it's the day that their colleagues are there. All right. So how do you get it right, and where do you start? Sort of insights and actions. So Hubstar space utilization is focused on a couple of different categories of analytics. And again, the platform is solely focused on utilization, right? Which is measuring actual occupancy. How many people are in the office right now, which is the real time all the way to the left. So you can log in whenever you want, take a look at a floor plan and see where people are right now. So this allows folks to monitor return to office, understand where things are from a real-time perspective. We also can trigger alerts based upon the real-time monitoring of utilization. So you can set an alert that says, hey, if we get to within 10% of capacity or 20% of capacity, email the team, because we want to be aware of that so we can react to it and maybe free up some swing space or whatever the strategy is to account for maybe a peak happening. So that's the real-time analysis. Now that real-time is captured over time, which gets us to the next category, which is descriptive. So this is playing back what happened in the past. And the descriptive also can be displayed in aggregate, which gives you a more concrete metric to base decisions on. So we can take a look at patterns or trends or utilization overlaid on a floor plan and a heat map in aggregate. The next category is predictive. And this is where we're predicting future occupancy all the way down to the building, floor, and zone levels. We have clients that are using this, the predictive analytics, to order food for the coming week. So as opposed to for food services going ahead and ordering food based upon capacities or guesses of how many people are going to be in the office on specific days, predictive analytics can outline a very accurate prediction of what that week to come is going to be. And some of our clients said, well, how can we trust the predictive analytics? So what we did is we added in the capability to see the actuals then get overlaid as time passes. So the prediction is made but locked in, and then the actuals overlaid, and any gaps are highlighted so that folks can dive into, well, what happened? Why was there a spike in demand on that particular day? Might have been a town hall meeting, an executive coming in and doing a town hall, and folks coming in on that day. That's sort of unaccounted for. So that's the predictive. And then last of all here, prescriptive. So this is the system working on your behalf. So when we're taking a look at utilization data for the portfolio over time at a high degree of granularity, we're looking at a lot of data, billions of rows of data, ones and zeros, in terms of folks in or not in, or sensors lighting up positive or negative, there's someone there or not there. So it's a lot of data that's being stored. And what we've done is built AI algorithms that analyze that data on your behalf and then present options. Just like going to the doctor, they ask you a bunch of questions, and if there's an issue, prescribe something. Same type of philosophy. So it's prescribing solutions to things that you may not even know are going on. Also, one of the real popular things right now is informing architectural design. So doing the analysis and prescribing back, here is the optimal recommendation in terms of collaboration space. So more of these, less of these, 2 more small, 3 more medium, less of the extra large conference rooms, more open collab, less closed collab, whatever it might be. So prescribing that back so it's a very informed on the point decision in terms of investing in re-architecting and redesigning floors that you're capable of doing so. So those are the types of analytics that we focus on with Hubstar Space Utilization. And this next slide is going to show you some of those actual analytics from the system. So in the top left there, you have a heat map view, and this one can show real-time analytics. It also can show descriptive analytics. So playing back over time at different levels of aggregating data. So play back 90 days by the week or by the day, or drill into 15-minute intervals. So you can zoom into time and understand, well, what's more popular, right? So the heat map is using that floor plan as an architectural reference point, great measure, and then overlaying the utilization on top of it. So we can understand our utilization rate for the building, for the floors, understand our actual counts, understand vacancy, but also understand concentrations of what's being used. So where are people going and what's being used throughout the day. So that's the heat map, which is one of the really popular metrics within Hubstar utilization. And then to the right of that, we see patterns. So the patterns here, this is analyzing, again, in aggregate, you can pick whatever time frame you want, but this is doing a couple of things. It's showing peaks, so I can analyze a year worth of data. And one of the great things about Hubstar Space Utilization is how it's performance tuned. So all this data is in memory. So I can say, I want to analyze a year as opposed to 2 weeks. And 1 second later, I have a year's worth of data in front of me. So it's immediate in terms of response. So that's going to give you your all-time peaks, your average peaks. It's going to give you your ebbs and flows throughout the week, right? Your patterns of use. Lower left, trends. So analyzing this data over time and drawing a trend line through it to say, hey, your folks in this case are not coming back, right? So folks are coming to the office, and there is an occupancy trend that's going down. So analyzing all the buildings, some might be going up, some have flatlined. In this case, this one's going down. So we might focus in this building, survey some folks, go to the building, talk to some folks, and understand why folks are coming in but not returning. And then lastly, SmartWay 2, our space scheduling solution, is pre-integrated with Hubstar Space Utilization. So there's a suite of analytics that are focused on analyzing the scheduling or booking data. understanding demand for collaboration space and the types of space, identifying no-shows, underutilized rooms, higher capacity and less use. So those are just some examples of different types of analytics that we offer in the platform. All right, what does it take to, what does actual ROI look like using data? So here's a couple of use cases. I won't spend a lot of time here, but this was a Fortune 500 healthcare company, had requirements around wanting to put their different buildings into categories of, hey, these are the ones we want to keep, not sure, remove, developing a strategy. They wanted to influence design based on data and real estate portfolio optimization. Scope, you could see that, the 2 million square foot, 12 buildings, 63 floors. So they started with a proof of concept, then moved into phase 2. So incrementally adding buildings, phase 2 and phase 3, adding buildings, and then the integration points were Cisco DNA Spaces, VergeSense for sensors, and then a mobile app that they had that was an employee-facing mobile app. So challenges were they had a requirement, they wanted a single source of truth, so they didn't want data in more than one place. Looking at sensors for the entire portfolio was cost prohibitive. So the solution was a unified view. That's one of the things that Hubstar Space Utilization brings to the table, is taking the Wi-Fi and sensor and combining it into one view of analytics. So it's not like you view a chart in Wi-Fi mode and view a chart in sensor mode. It's unified or normalized into one view. And they broke their buildings into best, better, and good. So they had Cisco DNA Spaces for open areas and Verge sensors for all bookable spaces and best. Better was DNA Spaces only, DNA Spaces and sensors only for meeting rooms. And then good is looking like it's going to be DNA only. The result was space redesign of their major hubs to increase focus on collaboration space. Hubstar utilization data was used to drive lease renewal decisions, including decommissioning an entire building in October. The next one here is another use case. This is a technology company, Fortune 5, 2.1 in the system, 27 buildings, 79 floors. Similar requirements, although their main focus was data-driven space design, optimize space for the new future of work, so to speak. Manage meeting rooms and really get a handle on ghost bookings, meeting room efficiency, so real focus on the collaboration space, and then measuring return to office velocity. They did not want to be blind on RTO. So the scope was proof of concept to start, phase 2, 23 buildings, phase 3, 4 more. So key integration points: Aruba ALE, Aruba Central, XY Sense for their occupancy sensors, and then also Microsoft Exchange. So challenges were single source of truth. So they didn't want data all over the place. That's a constant with almost every one of our customers, is having a single platform for all of the utilization data. So it all comes into one single platform and it's all normalized into one single set of metrics. So we're not measuring one way here and another way there. Sensor only solution was used as too costly. Not to say sensors are not part of the strategy, it's just hard to deploy them everywhere. Or not hard, it's expensive. And then space scheduling solution API could not send planned booking data Hubstar. So that was a problem we found. So they had an existing space scheduling solution, but their API was not mature enough for us to garner data from it. And then they were also transitioning from ALE to Central. So solutions, unified view for Wi-Fi plus sensor. We ended up integrating directly to Microsoft Exchange as opposed to the scheduling solution. So the scheduling solution was using Exchange resources. So we integrated to Exchange and we're able to solve that ghost booking use case. And then lastly, we support both Aruba Central and ALE. So 2 data sources for Wi-Fi data. Some buildings Central, some buildings ALE. So that was a solution there. So that's a couple of use cases. So what does the optimal real estate strategy look like with data? This just sort of paints a picture. Measure, understand your demand, right size, and then optimize what you have, what you intend to keep. We all know that the office should play a part in the future of work. How much of a part? That's what we look to answer by measuring and then optimizing it so it's fit for purpose. In terms of implementations, we measure them in weeks, not months and years. So the platform has been designed to get up and running fast. And because sensors don't have to be part of the strategy day one, Wi-Fi is there, we start lighting up data relatively quickly. All right, so that's it. So at this point, we can dive into some questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Chris, for this presentation, and thank you to all attendees for sending in questions. We'll now kick off our Q&A to address the questions you have sent in, and please continue to submit any questions that you may have. Okay, Chris, the first one is, do you work with any other Wi-Fi providers other than Cisco and HP?
Good question. So we will is the answer. So one of the requirements for the Wi-Fi solution is that it has a location service. So when we integrate to the Wi-Fi system, we're not just looking for the devices that are connected, but where is that device relative to space on a floor plan? So an XY coordinate on the floor plan. So that's something that Cisco was out in front of with DNA Spaces, and HP being number 2 in terms of market share, also there with Aruba Central and their capabilities. And up and comer in the market is Extreme, and they have Extreme Aerohive, and they do have location services. So we have that additional integration point in development now. So in a matter of months, we will offer Extreme as another Wi-Fi provider.
Okay, great. Another question is, do you have a way to validate the accuracy of utilization counts?
That's a good question, and that one comes up quite often. So when as part of an implementation, so the quick answer to that question is yes. We do have a tool which allows us to validate accuracy. So when we first stand up utilization and we integrate to the Wi-Fi solution, and the analytics begin to light up with data, we want to ensure accuracy because there might be some fine tuning of what we call the Wi-Fi zones and how many APs they encompass and so on and so forth. But the long and short of it is we have a tool that we call County, count with a Y on it. And that tool allows someone to deploy to the field to understand, go to an area and tap and count how many people they observe. That data from the app feeds directly into our solution, and we match that against the point in time and measure our counts versus the field counts to gauge accuracy and validate accuracy. And sometimes it's used to tune algorithms, and others it's just, hey, here's the result, which is 95, 97% accuracy, whatever the result might be based on the Wi-Fi only.
Okay, perfect. Another question is, can you still provide heat maps with Wi-Fi only?
We can, yes. So we can provide heat maps with Wi-Fi only. The issue with Wi-Fi only, and we sort of spoke about this with the good data, Wi-Fi gets down to the zone level. So it's a larger area of a floor plan. So yes, the heat map can display on the floor plan, but it's going to be at the zone level. That's where if someone wants to sort of separate out of that larger zone, the collaboration space, that's where sensors come into play. But to answer the question directly, yes, heat maps are one of the analytics that are available with Wi-Fi only.
And following up on that question, what sensor providers do you have the capability to work with?
So we work with a lot of different sensor providers. So the sensor providers that I mentioned in the use cases, VergeSense and XY Sense, we work with Density, we work with Point Grab, we work with FreeSpace. So we're in communications with all the top sensor providers. And what we're doing is we're creating a pre-integration. So Hubstar Space Utilization has a API endpoint. These solutions have API endpoints, webhooks. So what we're doing is we create an adapter, which just translates the way they output their data to the way we input our data. So it's an easy thing to do. So those are just some examples of some of the sensor providers that we are pre-integrated with. But that does not prohibit us from working with other sensor providers that we may not have an integration to. So if you're looking at, or you already have some sensors deployed, and I didn't mention their name, we have a standard API in which they can push their data to. So create an adapter and push the data to our API. So as long as they, and most all do, have the capability to talk via API, there is the capability to integrate.
Perfect. One other question we have here is, what space scheduling applications do you integrate with?
Good question. So we have the capability to integrate with all the leading space scheduling solutions. So as long as that solution has the capability to integrate, so does it have a modern API in which they can either push data to us, or we can call their API and pull it in. So either push or pull. So as long as it has a modern architecture and an API framework, then we can integrate to it. Even in the case the use case that I highlighted, where there was a challenge of the system that was in place, the space scheduling solution that was in place in that particular case, did not have that capability. So most space scheduling solutions are going to integrate to Microsoft via the Graph API, right? And leverage the Exchange resources. So we're in that case capable of integrating with Exchange and garnering all the booking detail that route. So those are challenges that we encounter. So I wouldn't want to say that there's definitely ones out there, or name anyone that's out there that doesn't have the capability. So as long as it has a modern API, we have the capability to integrate with it. Otherwise, there is always the path of Exchange resources.
Perfect, perfect. And I believe we have time for one last question. The last one here is, how can I schedule a demonstration?
That's the best question of all. So right here, so the best way to schedule demonstrations, reach out to us. So on this particular slide that you see right here, you can email hello@hubstar.com and request a demonstration, or just go to our website. And if I just go to our website right here, I think I have it behind here. There we go. So go to hubstar.com, right? So here's our website, and the top right, just click request a demo. So easy enough. Just navigate to hubstar.com and click request a demo. Put in your details and click request a demo. We'll respond right away, and we can get that scheduled. And it's also not just us demoing our solution to you, but understanding what your goals and use cases are that you want to solve, and how we can fit into that, help you achieve those.
All right, thank you so much, Chris. It looks like we are out of time. Thank you for sharing this presentation today, and thank you to Hubstar for sponsoring this webinar. Of course, thank you to our audience for attending today. A recording from today's session will be made available on our magazine's website, facilityexecutive.com. Thank you and have a great afternoon.
Thanks for your time, everybody.